Welcome to Voices Beyond the Spectrum. Real stories, brave voices, radiant perspectives. This is the podcast for parents and caregivers of autistic and neurodivergent children and teens. I'm your host, and each week we hold space for honest conversations, shared struggles, and hard-won victories from those who truly live it. You're not alone, your story matters, and it starts here. Welcome back, everyone, to Voices Beyond the Spectrum. I'm your host, Karla Chinen, and today we have a wonderful guest. Her name is Ruth Cassell, and we will be talking in regards to unmasking and embracing identity after the diagnosis. So welcome, Ruth. Do you mind telling our listeners a little bit about you?
Yes, and thank you so much for having me on today. I really am excited to be here with you.
Oh, thank you for joining us.
So, just a little bit about me. I'm a wife, I'm a homeschooling mama, and I'm an autism strategist, and we can dive a little deeper into what that is. It's a company I created. And my husband and I were raising an incredible son. His name is Elijah, who is nonverbal. And he is on the autism spectrum. He is a level 3. It's actually in both sectionalities of the diagnosis. He's a level 3. And he communicates on with the AAC on the 77 grid. And then, we'd use other things on our journey for him, like spelling to communicate and just, fostering his curiosity for determination and learning more about our patients and through our walk of faith and unconditional love with him, and just and joining him, But outside of motherhood, I run a podcast. It's called Finding Your Identity in Your Autism Journey, where it's a space for real conversations and all about parenting, advocating, and rediscovering who we are behind the diagnosis. And our lives are layered, with therapies and our faith and advocacy and laughter. And it's deeply, resonates within helping other families. This is something that I'm very passionate about and navigating that path, both, not only where they need to go, but together, having, a heartfelt strategy for everyone. So that's a
And
little bit about me.
no, and it's beautiful. I mean, I think we need more moms, honestly, and parents, not just moms, kind of stepping up and passing on, I guess, the torch of knowledge, to other parents. And it is beautiful that you've created this platform, finding your identity in your autism journey and the podcast. And then obviously we'll definitely dive a little bit more into what is an autism strategist and go into detail about that. And as can you describe so far what your parenting journey has been so far?
I was thinking about this, and I would actually say my journey has been like very multifaceted, but rooted in resilience. The layers of complexity and consistency is always evolving, but it's always, deep rooted within my faith. That's where I get my strength, that what keeps me moving forward, especially on those very hard days that we can experience as, you know, mothers, but also as special needs mothers. We have some really hard, challenging days, not only sometimes with our children, but sometimes with advocating for our children so they can be heard as well.
Say that again. With that being said, when you and your husband received that diagnosis, what changed in your life, or what was that tipping point, that aha moment for you that things needed to change, or that your life was no longer what it was before the diagnosis?
Well, like after we received my son's diagnosis, I honestly felt isolated, you know? And the reason is we received it during COVID. Um, we had gone through but he had a severe regression, my son. He had a regression and he was using words after an adverse event. And several, I talked about this in several different parts of my podcast. But we were expecting that he would get the diagnosis that he ended up getting. And I just remember, and we could talk more about this too, getting his diagnosis and how I received it was via email.
Wow.
Yeah.
Oh, oh my gosh. That,
So,
yeah. I mean that's hard. That's hard to do, you know. Um,
hmm.
I had another mom on here that she mentioned she received it. It wasn't even in her plain sight that she would get a diagnosis. She didn't even know her son had autism, and she received it via phone. And I'm like, I received it in person, and it was intense. I can't imagine reading it in an email and having to probably read it. How many times did you have to read it to really sink in?
So I read it quite a few times, and then what made it worse is that I tried reaching back out to them so that I could get, I wanted to have a conversation about it. I knew I was going to receive it, so it was kind of not, but when you read it, it was kind of very harsh. And there's a lot of terms in there, especially at first, when you're first diagnosed, you don't really know. And there was no like referrals or what to do next. It was just a PDF of of the findings. And then they went on vacation, and because it was on during COVID, there was no response. It took me 3 weeks to have a conversation with the doctor via Zoom. And that can do a lot to a person. Google's not a good place to start Googling everything under the sun, you know. Um, you might need a little guidance, and I don't want a family ever to go through that again, and I
Yes.
had to like really use my faith in that point because I was like, I can't put what I'm reading into his life because at this point I don't know what his life is going to turn out to be. So let's stop because I was driving myself crazy.
Yes, of course. Oh my goodness. Yeah, I can't, I went through the whole diagnosis process, which, we will go when, I go through your podcast and we talk about that. But as it is, it's a lot to process and then just to not get the answers, to feel completely lost and
Mhm.
mis not even misguided. You're not even guided at this point, you know? And Google, like you said, it's not the best. It's like when you have a headache, oh, you Google headaches, and then all this worst case scenario populates on you,
Yeah.
So I can imagine the fears that were going through your head and also already at the time you got the diagnosis during COVID, that's major. People were already in panic mode during that time and already isolating themselves,
Hmm.
and things like that. So I can't even imagine on top of
Yeah.
that having to worry about something like your son's diagnosis and what's the next steps to go about.
Yeah.
So well, you mentioned faith a lot. Can you shine light as to how your faith helped you get through the diagnosis and put you at peace that you are now with the diagnosis?
So anything, it didn't matter if it was, this or anything in my life, I just turn it over because I can't, what is it good it's going for me to worry about something? And then I would just, I would read in the word and I would stay in that and then I would pray and meditate on it. Because at the end of the day, I can't change a lot. I can't change things in this world. And what's it going to do? Just give me more gray hairs if I worry about it, right?
Yeah. Okay. Yeah, that's true.
So I can't I can't take credit for everything because that's what gives me my peace. I have to like really set back and just feel where I'm at and pray on it. Be there in the moment. And that has given me a lot of peace and calm with my son as well, because I know how to be in the moment with him. And I do think it's because I've done that. I've done that all my life, like when things were rough and hard. And um, because it's not been easy before him and it's not easy now, but that's what I would do. And I would always get through. And people are like, "Oh, you're so lucky." I get that a lot. Like, "Oh, you're so lucky." I'm like, I am." No, it's not luck. It's not luck. It's the Heavenly Father taking care of me because I'm doing my due diligence and giving it to Him and not keeping it to myself because I definitely can't handle it. And that's the way I look at everything. Because my birthing experience was not great either. I myself almost passed twice giving delivery to my son. So I say that. So I give that over to him.
Definitely. I mean, wow, what an inspiration. And written, like you mentioned, like a journey of resilience, to not only have to go through the process of, you mentioned um, you weren't sure you were going to be able to have kids, then to
Hmm.
being pregnant and during the delivery, having that, you know, those different incidents where you almost pass, and now with the diagnosis, I mean, if your resilience is not being tested, I don't know what is,
Exactly.
but it's beautiful that you do hold on to your faith, and whatever helps you get through the process. And I'm pretty sure you also have a strong community. You mentioned your husband. You're building your own community, I think, through
Yeah.
this. I mean, I know when I did this podcast, I think it's also a little bit of like selfishness in my behalf because I did want to get to know more parents and build this community and not only just give back, but you're also taking in a lot of grace from them, and a lot of knowledge, especially when you interview the what I call the OGs, the ones that have been already through it
Hmm.
there and back, and they share their knowledge. It gives you a little bit more peace of mind that everything's going to be okay,
Yeah.
you know. So, and then as far as what helped you shift into that autism position,
Like the autism strategist
strategist
position.
position, yes.
So what was interesting about that is before before my son was born, I was in pharmacology and I was in corporate and then I was like, I don't want to be in this world anymore because I want to be time with my baby. This was before I knew about autism, like what was going to be happening in my world. And because it was so many hours and I didn't want to do that. So I moved over to finance and then I worked in as a financial strategist for I would say before I started getting really heavy into autism until about 21 to 2018 to 21. I was working just doing financial. Um so then what started the autism strategist one was that when I went to my first IEP meeting for my son. That's what started it. And also at the same time I started a Facebook group. And this is the reason why I started that group and I started a company was because his first IEP never had been in an IEP before, so I didn't really know what to expect. But obviously because it was during the time of COVID as well, the we had it via Teams, and the teacher had another child's IEP with all their information, somebody else's child on
Oh,
there. I seen all their stuff, like address, phone number, all of this stuff. So I was not okay with that, first of all. I was like, oh, I can see someone else's information. They're like, oh, we need that. I was like, need it for what? That's not my son's name. They're like, oh, we're gonna copy and paste their IEP because they're similar. What?
what?
What are we doing?
Oh my God, no.
I was like, that, no, we're not doing that. That's what I said. I was like, we're not doing that. I was like, it's called an IEP, Individualized Educational Plan, for a reason. That child's not my child, and my child's not that child. So we're not copy and pasting. I said, we're gonna resume at a later time until we can get someone else from the district here. That was my first IEP meeting. Then because of that, I looked more into like IDA and more about the laws, and I started learning and then taking courses for, being a IEP advocate because of that experience. And then in my state, and a lot of states that don't have state tax, if you have your IEP holds weight if you need to get onto Medicaid waiver or share cost Medicaid. And then when I made those connections, I was like, oh no, this needs to go together because people don't understand how they affect one another and to be able to get outside grants and things like that. So that is really how the Autism Strategist was born, was because of that. And then I created a Facebook group because of that as well at the same time, because I didn't want parents to go through it alone. I,
Exactly.
I
Yeah, I
couldn't
mean,
believe that.
it's unbelievable, like I live in California, which things are a little bit different and formatted different, but the struggle's still the same. A lot of parents, when they get that diagnosis, they didn't even know that their kid had autism or had another neurodivergency. So then at that point, it's like, where do I go? What do I do? I mean, there's a mourning process that you go through when you get the diagnosis, kind of putting aside the kid and the life you thought you were going to live with that kiddo and saying, okay, now I have literally like a week to go through this mopping, like mourning process, and then I got to get my life together so I can continue getting all the services for my kids,
Hmm.
and move forward from this, and I think that's where a lot of parents stand at, and the fact that you created that and provide that additional like cushion and guidance for them. It's amazing. We do the same with empathy out here in California. Like I said, regulations are a tad bit different. I mean, um, IEP is federal, so that's the same everywhere, but how the state handles it is very different.
Hmm.
And the programs that are attached to those are very different. So it's very good for a parent, like you said, to take courses, educate themselves,
Hmm.
because I personally, have been through many IEPs, and I'm an autism behavioral interventionist assistant myself, with a district. So, it's a lot of layers, I think, that can go through that with that IEP. And if you don't have parents, and I can't even imagine how much change you've caused those parents in a positive manner, and how better that those children's outcomes in school districts now have become because of that additional information you've provided to these parents.
Hmm.
So they didn't feel like you did on your first IEP,
Yeah.
you know.
Yeah.
So,
And I'm glad you
yeah.
bring that up because a lot of people in my group, they will get, I do charge a service for that. And I will go to meetings with them and I do breakdowns for them and I show them like where we're at. And I've seen so many. I'm like, I would like the last past three IEPs, please. I do not want the most current. What I'm looking for is like, are we meeting our goals? Did they change them? Are we just copy and pasting them? And I'll tell you, for this district in my area, they're just copy and pasting from the year before, which is like, are we really making progress? No, you guys aren't even doing anything. So then I do, you know, make them work for what they're getting paid for. Like, what are we doing? 3 years and we have the same copied and paste goal. What's going to happen when we get to middle school? You
Yeah.
know,
I mean, that's where the parents, I think, you have to educate them and say, hey, you know what? If they're not making progress, why are they not making progress?
exactly.
What needs to be modified, whether it's a BIP, whether it's
Hmm.
a sensory diet so they can regulate and be focused for class. What is it that needs to get done in order for that kiddo to
Yeah.
succeed to the next level and are the goals realistic? Are the
Yeah.
goals specific to the child?
Yeah.
Are they not able to meet because they don't make sense? So it's,
Hmm.
sitting with the parent and explaining that to them. That's what we do also with the IEP trainings.
Yeah.
I'm like, look at your goals, make sure that they're smart.
Yes. Yes. And I've had to even push back for more testing on for some kids. Like I just did this one and I'm like, I think he probably has audio processing disorder as well. I was like, there's something else going on here. And what was so interesting in that meeting, the teacher and the SLP in that meeting was like, oh, thank God you said it because we think it too. I'm like, then why didn't you bring it up?
The
Like, why did
retaliation.
I have to bring it up as the advocate? Like, they're opening it up. That's great. But like,
Yeah.
could you imagine? What if the parent didn't hire me to do that? Would they be even doing these testing in the fall? Probably not.
Yeah. And I mean, and this, I've been in great districts, I've been in great districts where you could see the staff cares. I personally work for one that I I'm very that's why I chose that district. It's a really good district to work for. And they're really pro teachers helping and assisting these students to the best of their capabilities, But with that being said, I have also seen other districts that you're right. A lot of the times you could hear the parents are like, "Oh, the teacher told me this, this, and this." But they can't say anything. So I'm like, well, don't bring up that they told you. First of all,
Yeah.
you don't
Yes.
want, let's keep them as friends. You
Yes.
know, let's be strategic about the situation and okay, what can we do on our end? What test can we request on our end for that to go through, for your child to be given those services, because obviously, I mean, there is a process, and I think sometimes educating the parent on that as well is huge.
Yes.
The parent assumes that as soon as they bring up an issue, the service is going to be given right away. It doesn't work like that.
Yeah.
It first they have to be tested. Well, it has to be requested. It has to
Right.
be approved. Then it has
Yes.
to actually happen, which, the timelines are 15, 60 days. It's a
Hmm.
process with that. So it's also about educating our families, and that's why I think it starts there. It starts at home. And then based on home, for the most part, not all districts, but for the most part, if the district sees the parent is involved and knowledgeable, it's very hard for them to neglect that child,
Yes. Yes.
because they will be that parent. And I'm
Yeah.
not saying that parent in a negative matter. You don't want to be immediately, I'm gonna go to war with the district. It's not about that.
Exactly.
Partnerships, and building that healthy partnership, but them acknowledging that you're as knowledgeable as the district is,
Yes.
and I love that, the fact that you come in and you give those tools to those parents,
Hmm.
and you guide them through that process, which is amazing, you
Yeah.
know,
I
and
will
then,
say my
uh-huh,
district too, they're like, oh, Miss Castle's going to be your advocate. It's been very interesting. And I congratulate the team when they're doing great because I like it when I see a team really write a great, robust, awesome IEP and is willing to work. But I've been in some where I'm like, oh my, what are we doing? And then I have to shed light on that. And I don't like shedding light on that, but it needs to be shone on because at the same time, what's going to happen? What if I don't advocate for this kid and it helps another kid that I don't even know, you know?
yeah, and that's great, I think you having to do that is not necessarily a negative thing. And I think, I mean, and correct me if I'm wrong, you might have started with a kid, let's say 2022 or 2023. But by 2025, they know you and they know that that IEP looks very different to what it used to look like in 2022. So,
Hmm.
like I said, it comes back to the parent. It comes back if the parent is not capable of, feeling like they're able to understand all the information that's being provided, then get someone to help you.
Hmm.
There's plenty of, there's companies like your company, there's family resource networks that can go ahead do that. In California, we have Inland Regional Center and Regional Center service coordinators that will tag along to these IEPs with the parent to show that support.
Hmm.
It's about the parent, I think, stepping up also and
Yes.
looking for these resources as much of an overwhelming situation you're in, because we're moms, I have two on the spectrum. Like,
Yeah.
we know what it's like to have a million therapies and along with behaviors, along with other drama that happens in our own personal life, and still
Yeah.
have to step in there, and do what we have to do for our kids.
Exactly.
So
Exactly. I mean, I'm
yeah.
not going to push any harder than what I would push for mine. And yes, I homeschool him, but a lot of people don't understand that you can keep an active IEP when you're homeschooling. And the reason why I homeschool my son is because of, I got some things going on with the district,
Mhm.
which is okay. I'm not going to talk about that, but there's some things going on with my current district that an event that happened with my son. He had to be transferred out of the school and to another location because of what happened. They couldn't follow his IEP. That was a principal email. Um, so I say that because you can keep an open IEP homeschooling. It does make it easier, but my son's in a lot of therapies. So between the therapies and homeschool, it's better for me, and I've found a great balance with him, and he is doing so well. And I don't want to mess with the thing that we got going on with the homeschool with all the therapies. If that makes sense.
Yeah, no, no, no. My kid is in a non-public, and I know, I mean, I had to go that route at that point because the district, they did their best, and that's where I say partnership comes in hand. When things happen, they don't take it personal, and I don't take it personal because we know that there wasn't sufficient support in that school to manage his needs. So we had to go the non-public route. But with that being said, the non-public route's not for everyone. Like I'm not gonna lie, my son travels an hour and a half to that non-public school every day and comes back an hour and a half. I had to discontinue the outside therapy for him because he comes back. I don't want to burn him out. But that school does have in services in-house. So he
Right.
gets plenty of occupational, plenty of speech, and plenty of ABA within that school that he goes to, which is an amazing school as well. Um, but if that wasn't the case, I don't think I would want to burn out my kid because they're little people, They're
Yes.
they they're little humans that need to, have time to breathe and be kids. And I think
Yes.
sometimes all this therapy, it's like a full-time job for them.
Yes.
And as moms, we have to realize what the limits of our children are, what the limits are in order for us to modify their day adequately. So they don't burn out, they don't get overstimulated, and things like that. So yeah, definitely you do what you got to do. I mean, that's why every autism kiddo or every neurodivergent kiddo is different.
Oh yeah.
There's no one alike, and everyone's going to respond differently to how they do work and how they thrive.
Mm-hmm.
So the fact that you were able to find that happy medium for your son and thrive and still be able to manage working, doing what you do with advocacy, doing the podcast, wearing the million hats and still be able to be there for him and teach him, that's amazing. That truly is.
Yeah. And I try to just keep it organized because I will say he is in quite a few therapies, but some of them he has at ABA, like come to him. So it doesn't seem like, he's going all these places. And then I call them fun therapies. What do I call them? Therapies. Well, he does adaptive swim. And I feel like that's fun. He likes it, but he's also doing motor skills in there and actually learning how to swim. And then I have him on parkour, and that helps with more like coordination and things like that. So I'm like, that's fun. And then we do equestrian therapy. And he likes the horses. So I'm like, I try to I know we're working on skills, but trying to not make it as skill driven, is if that makes sense.
Yeah, of course. I mean, they're kids at the end of the day, like you don't want to make it seem like it's a job for them.
Mm-hmm.
And I think if you're a good therapist, you get to know your client and you get to know how they learn. If you're a good teacher,
Mm-hmm.
you know how your kid learns. Like I remember my son, like he I homeschooled him for 2 years prior to the non-public school. And he learned how to write really large words, multiple syllables, and he refused to grab a pencil. So what did we do? We went outside with chalk. You know, my daughter, she has trouble sitting down and doing her homework. So what I do is she does like one sheet of math, and then I have her do like this obstacle course to get her body moving. Then she comes back and sits down to do another sheet, you
That's
know?
what I do.
A- And it's like that's what helps because if you think about it, their body is doing this.
Mm-hmm.
Their mind can't focus if their body's doing this. So you burn
Exactly.
out the body a little bit by doing that obstacle course, and then they come back and they can focus for another like 10 to 20 minutes, and then they go at
Exactly.
it again.
Yep.
It's like simple modifications like that that us as parents should know what works best for our kids. Not every parent, I can see it be very overwhelming. I mean, I'm blessed to have the support I have.
Yeah, me
So,
too.
there's those moms that don't and those dads that don't, and no fault to them. It's just a situational thing. But
Mm-hmm.
if you do have that option, knowing your kid and what works best for them, it's actually saves us. I don't know if for you, but for me, it saves me from meltdowns. It
Yes.
saves me from screaming so that because I'm frustrated. Why can't you just sit down and do your homework? Because he can't, and that's the reality of things. She needs to decompress, you know.
Yes.
And the fact that you are in tune to that, it's beautiful. And I mean, those therapies are amazing. It helps them learn how to self-regulate, motor skills, find motor skills. I mean, I mean, they're amazing. They've been proven to work for a lot of our kiddos,
Yeah.
you know.
Yeah.
So,
Because a lot of people are always saying he has a full schedule. I'm like, yeah, but also he's very active. I know he has a full schedule, but I also need to make him tired by the end of the day too. Because if he doesn't get, like on days that we don't do a lot of things, I see more behaviors because we're not doing a lot of things. Sometimes I need a rest. Like I can't keep going at your level and mom doing all her stuff. Like we had a lazy Saturday and I was just like, oh my. But we had a lot more behaviors because we weren't doing as many things.
yes. No, I like during the weekends, I'm like, oh my God, I gotta plan things for these kids because if not, they're like all over. So I'm like, okay, we're gonna do pancake art in the morning. Then after that, we're gonna go outside and we're gonna go in the swimming pool and then we're gonna go here. And I'm like, oh my God, you guys are too much. I'm like, can we just have a lazy Netflix and
Chill.
snacks? Yeah, chill day, please, because I can't with you guys,
Yeah.
but that's how their body works, and you just have to kind of like have like 30 cups of coffee and keep it moving.
Keep going.
So, yeah. So, and then as far as your podcast, now bringing that one in, how did you come up with the idea? What kind of sparked that to start off the podcast for you?
So that's interesting is because when I started my group, when I started my Facebook group, so many people, they come and they ask me so many things. They ask all kinds of stuff, like all the supplements that my son's doing, like how did you get him to do this? Because yes, he's nonverbal and he's level 3, but he's fully potty trained. And they're like, how did you do that? How are you doing X, Y, and Z? How is he so calm? I do a lot of supplements, and a lot of my people in my group were like, you need to have your own podcast. So they have pushed me into doing a lot more out of my comfort zone. They're like, "Come on, you can do it. You can." And I'm like, "Okay, I'm gonna do it." So after about a year of several of them pushing, and because I also host in person, like once a month get-togethers, and I do parent trainings with them, and they're like, you really need to do a podcast. You can reach more people and you can help more people. And I'm like, okay, but I don't know how to do any of that.
Yeah.
So
Oh,
that's how it got born.
nice. Well, I mean, hey, if the demand's there, why not, huh?
Hmm.
So, and then they're right. I mean, you do reach more people, and I think, like I said, just giving that platform for specialists to come and talk, on your platform and explain the benefits of certain therapies or
Hmm.
things that have been working for you, or even for families to come and share their personal stories to
Yeah.
shine light maybe on not such the pretty side of a diagnosis, and how it can affect everyone in the journey as well. So I
Hmm.
mean, it's a great platform to get that information through and across. With that being said, to kind of close it up a bit, um, if you could go back to when you first got that diagnosis and you could tell that young Ruth, the younger Ruth of 2020, say, it's going to be okay, or what would you tell Ruth?
Honestly, I tell her it's going to be okay. And it's going to take you to places that you never dreamed of. But don't be scared of it. Embrace it. Walk through it. You're not alone. You won't be alone. And don't be scared to challenge things. Step into yourself and push forward.
Thank you very much, Ruth.
Okay.
Well, that is it for today. Thank you again for joining us with Voices Beyond the Spectrum. It was a pleasure to have you here, Ruth,
Yes.
and sharing your story and everything you're doing for your community and the changes you're not only doing with your son, but also other children, and impacting those families. So we really appreciate that in the community. Thank you again. And
Thank
thank
you
you,
for having me.
everyone. Well, I hope to see you guys again next week on another episode. Have a great one. Bye bye. Thank you for joining us on Voices Beyond the Spectrum. I'm your host, Karla Chinen, and I'm so grateful for Ruth Cassell for sharing her powerful story today. If this episode resonated with you, please follow and share the podcast. We're on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, YouTube, and Podbean. Help us uplift more voices in our community. Original music by Brad Kaloof, piano by Brad Kaloof and Sophia Chinen. Voices Beyond the Spectrum was brought to you by Empathy for Autism California, Inc. Thank you for listening. We'll see you next time.